We will look at listening part 6, the hardest part in the listening exam in CELPIP. Then I'll show you my notes. I'll show you what words, phrases, symbols, arrows you can use to effectively write down everything that is being said. And we'll look at that in multiple points of this audio in the actual exam. The audio is not paused, but I will pause it here to show you how I was taking these notes while listening, and then we'll look at some questions and see if these notes are actually effective in helping us get the answer. So by the end of this video, you will know the best note-taking strategy for the hardest part in the CELPIP exam. Now, let's play a little part of this listening, then we'll see the notes in a few seconds. Let's go.
You will
part
now
6.
hear a report, and after that, 6 questions will appear. Choose the best way to answer each question. This recording will be played only once. While adults in this country are getting too accustomed to superhero movies, the peak it has noticed among children and teenagers has been a phenomenon worth discussing. The peak of superhero movies was experienced last year, and it looks like this year it will exceed the previously set record, with already billions of dollars flooding in the cinema industry. Children have been noticed talking about these movies with each other in gatherings and in school. This clearly shows entertainment value. It also provides a boost to several businesses that depend on making action figures and promotions for these movies, as well as everybody involved in producing the actual movie.
Okay, let's pause and let's have a look at the notes we have compiled so far. After this, I'm going to show you a task and give you a task so you can continue doing what I did here. Now, we can see the way this started was it talked about how adults are yawning at the superhero movies, and that was not mentioned. I wrote this myself to remind myself that the speaker was saying something about how adults are done with superhero movies. I can also make a yawning face here instead of me writing down that adults are done with superhero movies. So this just makes a good summary for me in my own wordings. That's something that'll help me understand what was said. Now, there's an increase here. There's an arrow going up, and then it says child plus teen. So the arrow going up is talking about how movies are now at their peak. This is the arrow that reminds me about the word peak instead of me writing down peak. And child plus teen simply means children and teenagers are now attracted to these movies. There is an exclamation mark, which means it is a big thing, it is something to pay attention to, and something like that was said. So the exclamation mark reminds me that there was something notable about this fact mentioned. Now, the peak was last year. That's why I have an arrow here going from the peak to the last year instead of me writing down the peak was last year. So I'm trying to find words, arrows, symbols that'll summarize things quickly instead of me writing things down because I don't have that much time. Plus this year, so this is what will be added this year. Now it's not plus, again, in my mind, I'm not saying that last year's profits will be added to this year. It's an additional point where we're saying that this year it will reach billions of dollars. So instead of writing billions of dollars, dollar sign and B. That's it. That's a reminder that it's going to be billions. Now we're talking about children and teen, and we're talking about how they are always talking about these movies. So I wrote the word talk, connected it with an arrow instead of you writing down again children and teen. Just make an arrow to link it to what was being said. And they were talking about the entertainment value that this provides. This has resulted, so this, usually I put an equal sign or an arrow like this. It resulted in an increase in businesses, helps people with employment. Now, employment word was not mentioned, but this reminds me that they were talking about how it helps actors and people who these kids support. And it generates dollars. So that dollar sign is there for me to, again, remind myself that it's making money. Okay, now before I play the rest of the audio, you saw how I did my notes. There is more to come, so there are more pictures, more symbols I'll show you later. For now, how about you grab a pen and paper and do this with me. Let's try the next set of notes and see if you can get more detail than I did here, and we'll compare our notes. This is what we do in classes as well, and it's a very effective strategy. So pause the video if you don't have a pen and paper. I'm going to go with the next section, then we'll look at the notes again. At the end, we'll see why it's really effective. Now, this is part of our mock tests. If you want access to these mock tests, all you got to do is comment down below, like the video. We're selecting lucky winners who will get access to our free mock tests and training. All you got to do is comment and like, and we'll contact you with more information about this offer. Let's go with the next part of the section.
Yes, the kids have made several multi-millionaire actors and actresses with their persistent demand, and sometimes you may call it obsessive demand for such movies. But is a parental concern warranted? After all, wanting the best for their kids, parents are concerned if the movies will ultimately influence the child more than they could themselves due to the former's captivating nature. Retaining control of children is one thing, but one of the major concerns comes in the form of the violence and aggression displayed during these movies that can lead to children imitating behaviors. What behaviors these might be? Well, in every movie, it would involve a hero and some sort of villain who would ultimately resort to some conflict. And even if not, the bad guy has certain behavioral characteristics and ethically challenging dilemmas that might take center stage in the brain of an impressionable child. Then what about the distractions? Parents claim that this is completely something that diverts their children's attention from homework, as well as their interest in sports or any other activities, which could have gotten more time if they weren't glued to their TV screens, or constantly dragging their parents into cinemas.
Okay, let's have a look at the second set of the notes, and I hope you have your notes ready. Let's see who did better. Now, it starts here with obsessed. This was a word they mentioned, and these words sometimes are keywords because an answer might come from this word, asking you were they obsessed, were they reasonably interested, highly interested. So I'm always going to write down words like these that give the story an entire picture. So it says obsessed. That was mentioned in the transcript. Now it says the parents are the ones who are concerned. So this face right here is for parents. It shows me that there is a concern from parents, and just it's better and faster just to do that instead of writing the whole thing down. They're concerned about the movies, and they're concerned if movies are going to be greater than parents. So that means movies would have a bigger influence than parents. That's what the greater sign shows me. And parents, again, there was something about them being concerned about the obsession that kids have. So parent circle, obsessed circle, and draw an arrow because this is how parents are concerned. This is what they're concerned about. Then it talked about violence, and they were thinking about if this violence will translate into actual behaviors. It was a question. So there's a question mark. Then there was a reason why. Well, it's because, so equal sign, because there's a hero and villain stuff. And villain, you see an arrow going from villain. It tells us that the villain's characteristics are the ones that kids can copy. Then there's the mention of how there's distractions and how there would be no homework or no sports being done due to these distractions. Now, let's look at the next part, and this is the last part. Then we'll look at some questions.
Dr. Nightingale, a renowned medical expert on brain power, explains that these movies promote child imagination, which is needed at this age, and something that is constantly being attacked by social media and the school curricula. Movies are a safe place for a child to visit and explore the vastness of possibilities that the fantasy world provides. Of course, the expectation is not that the child would turn into Superman tomorrow, but that the child would be able to think beyond his or her limited horizons and think outside the box, fueled with more passion from watching such movies.
Now you saw what happened here was they changed the topic to another guy. And as soon as they did that, I made a column separating the above information from Dr. Nightingale, which I don't want to write and don't have time for it. Dr. N is enough. And that's where you make separate columns just to separate information and organize it nicely. This is a brain, okay? So that's that's the way I would understand a brain. Instead of writing that he is a brain expert, that would take me a lot more time. So he has something to do with brains, and he is talking about that further, how this promotes imagination with kids. And then there were a bunch of points that were listed very fast. So what you did is made bullet points. This is what you have to do. Bullet points, number 1, he is saying that movies are being attacked. It shouldn't be that way. Number 2, movies are safe. It's just fantasy. It's not real. Number 3, it helps people think beyond, and this is a box. There's an arrow going out of it. This reminds me that the doctor was saying that kids need to think outside the box. Instead of me writing all of that, I have this drawn quickly. And it promotes passion. And of course, some of my spelling and the way I'm writing this is very fast. So of course, it's supposed to be done in a rush. You don't have the luxury of writing neatly. So just quick cues. Incomplete sentences, never write full sentences, just some sentences that will help me remind myself what this was about. So children are quite passionate about it. That's why you can use these movies to promote their imaginations and use this passion. Now, we got all these notes. Again, you saw it from the start all the way from here to the end. Okay, now we'll see if this actually helps. Does this help us get answers to the questions? First question, the cinema industry this year, and here are the options. If you want to do it yourself, feel free to pause the video and try to answer. The answer is probably C or D. Now, C says it's going to be very satisfied with profits. D would have great profit margins. Now, we're going to go back to our notes and see what was said about the profits. There was the peak that was experienced last year, and this year it's going to be billions of dollars. We don't know anything about the margin because we don't know anything about the costs. I don't see any word here about margin or costs, so it's not going to be D. I'm going to go with C. Now remember, there was the word mentioned here, which is peak, and that was last year, and that's written in our notes. This one is trying to confuse us with mixing those words. It says we'll be behind last year, since last year was the peak, but that's nowhere mentioned in our notes that it is going to be behind. We know last year was the peak. That means that was the highest, but that does not mean it's going to be behind this year. And in fact, from the notes, we can't see any information like that. We just know it's going to be billions of dollars. So we're going to go with option C. And it's not the first $1 billion, because again, in our notes, that's nowhere to be mentioned. I would like you guys to do questions 2 and 3. In the comments, let me know what you think the answers are. Let's go to question number 4. And here we have Dr. Nightingale. Claims should be taken seriously. This should be easy because he is an expert in this field. We know this from our notes when we talked about Dr. Nightingale. He has this brain thing, which means he is a brain surgeon or he works in the brain stuff. That is enough for me to remember that he was some expert about brain power, and that's why C is the answer there. Number 5, why is it a risk that the kid will copy a movie villain's characteristics? We have that information right here in this part of our notes. So we were talking about a villain and his characters being copied because kids are young and they will copy the characteristics, and the violence, the behaviors can be copied, and there will be distractions too. So this question, again, this is the correct answer, but if you see the options, they're very close. It says in B, at that age, they can easily be influenced. And that was mentioned how the author or the speaker here was talking about how they have impressionable minds and how they're going to be copying behaviors and characteristics. That's the answer right there. Question number 6, a major criticism of movies is, let's get the option, reduces parental control. True, parents are worried about movies being greater than parents, could be an option. It makes parents pay a lot of money for cinema tickets, nowhere in our notes. It's an activity outside just studies. It is, but it's not a problem. It's not a criticism of movies. And it results in a sacrifice of other key areas, which was right here hinted with the word distractions, because with distractions, you're having no homework and no sports. So that will be the answer. 6 is D. And that's, that's that. Now, try questions 2 and 3. Once again, you can see with the power of effective note-taking, you can remember everything that was said, and you can never write everything. So you have to rely on short words, phrases, arrows, symbols, and some of your own memory to remember what was said and then effectively answer the questions. If you want the best practice for listening, as well as all other modules, check out our CELPIP self-paced course in the description. 15 hours, guaranteed study. If you fail, you get all your money back. Check it out. It also comes right now with free feedback on your writing and speaking. As usual, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and all the best.